Eagles at Rams. Eagles favored by 4.5 in LA. What are you looking for?
I mean, this is
Can you
kind
hear
of
how squeaky this thing is? This is bad.
I mean, I can. I don't know if it gets picked up on the mic.
Does that come through? I hate moving.
How impressive is this for the Rams that this is actually a reasonably close game by the spread? Coming into the season, this would have seemed like an absolute beatdown on paper, even on the road. Like Philadelphia would just come in and roll and take care of business. But the Rams team, outside of one performance, really, where the offensive line didn't function, and that's a risk this game because the Eagles have a good defensive line. But outside of that, it's been fine. Stafford is dealing. Puka Nacua looks legit. The offensive receivers are giving him just enough to work with. The offensive line is giving him just enough to work with. Kyron Williams is crushing it. And Aaron Donald is back to being Aaron Donald. And that alone is enough for the defense to function. So the Rams are actually not a terrible side.
Yeah, I'm impressed by the Rams, man. I was not expecting that. They've become one of the most fun teams in the NFL. And you know, we used to say it was stars and scrubs with the Rams. Well, Stafford's playing, you know, one of the highest levels of his career overall. Aaron Donald, as you mentioned, is back. And the new star is Puka Nacua, setting all sorts of – he could sit out this week and he still has the most yards through 5 games, you know, of any receiver in NFL history.
He already has 50-something targets. It's insane. That's a sort of, a guy missed a couple of games in a season type of number for some people.
Let me see the text. Took a screenshot of the text that I sent. I don't think Zach will care.
Yeah.
Zach just said, the Puka guy you mentioned for BYU is interesting, though. Way back when I mentioned him.
Yeah. The one concern for the Rams is, you know, they're only 2-2, and in 2 of those games, the 2 losses, their pass blocking grade has been 23.7 and 26.7.
That's
now
the thing I can't. The Eagles. That's the thing I can't figure out. The part I can't figure out is when does that show up? It's kind of like Titans home and away. I mean, is it every other week?
It showed up against San Francisco, elite pass rush. It showed up against Cincinnati, not an elite pass rush, but Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader, like they've got some players, right? It didn't show up against Seattle, who don't have any pass rush. And it didn't show up, curiously, against the Colts, who should have been able to exploit that.
Yeah, and the Colts had been playing pretty well up front. They're not great in Indianapolis, but they were on a good little stretch.
But if we're trying to discern meaning from that, it feels like the Eagles are on the 49ers-Bengals side of that spectrum more than they are the other two.
I would expect a higher pressure game here. But all that said, the Eagles barely won up front last week against Washington. And that's annoying, too. From just an analysis standpoint. Not that I'm rooting for it, just from an analysis standpoint. We see Jalen Carter there, though, 92.2 overall. Is it Jalen Carter is it the next Aaron Donald going up against Aaron Donald? Or is Jalen Carter just the next Chris Jones?
I mean, whatever he is, I don't think Joe Noteboom can block Jalen Carter. That would be my overall point. And if he can, I don't know that Steve Avila can block Jalen Carter.
Did they play?
I was literally going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Did they meet in the
national title game?
But, you know, Jalen Carter looks like one of the best defensive interior guys in the NFL. The Rams' interior might be their weakest spot. And, you know, the Eagles got more than that as well. So I'm actually struggling to see. This feels like the kind of game where that mismatch is big enough that the Rams' offensive line doesn't function, the Rams' offense doesn't function, and we get the bad version of this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the other side, the Eagles, so I think the Eagles pass rush, they have one of those games that makes it really difficult for the Rams to run their offense. On the other side, again, repeating it for the 900th time over the last 2 years, the Eagles have multiple ways to win. I think they'll be able to run the ball effectively against this Rams front. If you can neutralize Donald in the run game and just know where he is, you could kind of scheme around his disruption. I think the Eagles will be able to run, and as they showed last week, if they get into a shootout and Hurts has to make a comeback or he's got to throw the ball down the field, they're capable of doing that as well. So I like the matchup for Philly, and I'm also, with you, impressed that it's only 4.5 for the Rams. If you told this to me back in week 1, I would say it's double digits. Even with Stafford, even with Donald, it looked like a double-digit type of difference, but the Rams are playing really well, and they're fun, man. But
the Eagles' defense against Washington had 32 defensive stops. So that's a tackle that constitutes an offensive failure, right? Which could be 1 yard if it's third and fourth and short, or it can be 6 or 7 yards if it's 1st and 15 or whatever. either way, the offense didn't gain enough for it to be a successful play. So 32 defensive stops, 18 of which were compiled by the combination of Nicholas Moreau and Zach Cunningham. So 2 linebackers accounted for 18 of 32 defensive stops that the Eagles had in that game. That's crazy.
That's not what they're supposed to be. That's not their strength. It's not supposed to be their strength.
I mean, Cunningham would be.
Yeah, but it's just that's from a team building standpoint. It's like we're
the Eagles
trenches.
Yeah.
From
neither of those guys are supposed to be starting for them this year, right?
No, I know. Look, the Eagles, their depth shows up weekly in their different ways of winning. I think they'll cover the 4.5 here.
Yeah, I've talked myself into struggling to see how the Rams can function against Philadelphia's defensive line. So, same.